CWPA Remote Professional Edition, where we take a look at water polo players and where they are today.
This woman was a member of the Washington and Jefferson President's women's water polo team from 2008 to 2011. Afterwards, she went on to serve several years as the Director of Membership Services for the CWPA. And now, she is the Events Manager for USA Water Polo. I'm so very pleased to be joined today by Katie Wieber. Katie, thanks so much for agreeing to appear on CWPA Remote.
Thanks so much for having me. I'm excited about this.
Well, so am I. How and why did you end up choosing Washington and Jefferson?
I mean, a big part of it was the fact that I could swim and play water polo there. I knew that I wasn't really finished with that part of my life, so I wanted to try and play in college. And W&J offered that opportunity as well as a great education. So it ended up being a relatively easy choice in the end.
What was your very first practice like?
Well, as a freshman, I had swam all throughout the fall and winter season. So I actually came into water polo a little bit after some of the other girls because I was finishing up swim season. And I just remember kind of getting like a reality check because I was in really great swimming shape, but like my legs for treading and stuff were just not quite there yet. So I had a little bit of catch up to do those first few weeks. But I mean, my teammates were amazing and they were respectful that I wanted to do both sports. And so it was a really great, first couple of weeks.
And what about your very first game?
I remember being really, really nervous because in high school, our team wasn't great. So we weren't there wasn't a lot of expectations for us to necessarily win games. And obviously that's a little bit different team dynamic. So I was nervous about playing against other athletes that were better than me and, playing with teammates that were a lot better than me too. So, I was definitely remember being really, really nervous probably most of that first year whenever I had to go in there. I'm like, oh my goodness, what am I going to do?
And do you remember your very first goal?
I feel like I honestly don't remember the first collegiate goal. There weren't that many the first year, so I probably should remember.
Well, was there a memorable goal you scored?
And yes, there was one. I can't remember if it was, well, there's two that come to mind. And I can't remember if they were freshman or sophomore years, but one or the other. One was in a 7 overtime game against Grove City. I think I scored, they scored in the first overtime and then I scored to tie it back up again. So that one was really memorable because they were our rivals back then. And then another one at back when they used to have the Division III National Championship out in California. We qualified and went out. And I think this was sophomore year, but again, it was one of those buzzer beaters. I shot from half court and it magically went in, and that was also very memorable. And I definitely equate that second one to luck more than skill. But that was definitely memorable.
Well, what is your single best memory of your collegiate water polo playing career? Or if you have a couple, that's fine too.
Yeah, probably the training trips. Being able to come out here to California and play against teams that were always challenging and had a different style. It was always a really good learning and growth experience. And then just some of those long bus trips with the team and just getting to bond and have fun. We really got along really well. A lot of us lived in the same house, so there was just a lot of really positive memories with the friendships that I've made over the years.
And what about the other side of the coin? Any disappointing events?
I don't think so. I mean, obviously, we had multiple coaches throughout my 4 years there, so that is always a challenge, kind of adjusting to a new style of coaching and things like that. But I think once you work out those kinks, with those coaches, it goes pretty smoothly after that.
Well, I'd be interested, I'm sure our listeners would, or viewers would be actually interested in some of your reflections on your entire playing career at Washington and Jefferson.
I mean, I'm just really grateful that I had the opportunity to play, because there aren't that many schools in the area, I guess, that offer water polo and that offer it at that level, you know, because I wasn't experienced enough at that point in time to play at, you know, a Division I or II level. I only played for 2 years in high school. So I think I was a little bit behind like a lot of my peers experience wise. So just being able to have that experience in college and get to play and get to, you know, improve and grow within the sport was really, really meaningful for me. And it was a really important part of my collegiate career in general.
Well, this is obviously CWPA remote. So before we get into your current endeavor, tell us about your time at the CWPA.
It was great. I kind of look at it as like my first real job, because I went from W&J to coaching as a grad student at Mercyhurst, and then from there moved on to the CWPA. And I feel like it's true what they say about water polo being like a small community, because, you know, I was coaching against a lot of the coaches that I was now helping run the league for. So I got to make a lot of really great relationships with those different people. And I learned a lot in that role, just about administration and sports. And you know, like I basically learned, it was a very small office, so I got to learn all the ins and outs of running the league and running the collegiate conference, not just within my role, but I got to learn a lot of, you know, what other people were doing to help, you know, make the league run successfully.
So give us a little look inside the office day to day. I mean, what was your day-to-day job as Director of Membership Services?
So, you know, the CWPA is a pretty small organization in terms of employees. So I got to wear a lot of different hats. And I also got to see a lot of what everyone else was doing, you know, in their different roles, you know, to help the CWPA stay organized and move things forward. So my role was primarily working with the collegiate club teams to kind of help them stay organized throughout their season. There's a lot of paperwork that needs to be completed, and so a big part of my job was tracking all of that, as well as making sure they had the supplies necessary to host different tournaments throughout their league season. And then also working with the referees to make sure they had their hotel accommodations and travel stuff all set up for them so that they could actually get to all the different tournaments. Because I think there's about 17 different divisions in each of the collegiate seasons. So that's 17 different leagues, and that could be 17 different tournaments happening on any weekend. So a lot of being really, really organized to kind of make sure that everybody is taken care of when so much is happening at once. So, I mean, it was just a great experience to kind of build on those skills that I kind of didn't realize I already had to kind of set me up for like future success.
And any problems that you encountered that you remember?
Oh, definitely. There were a few times where there's some, you know, last minute changes with either weather causing an issue, you know, like a big snowstorm and the teams are trying to get up to Maine or something like that, where you have to do some last minute schedule adjustments or even relocations, as well as, you know, the referees trying to get where they need to go in those types of situations where like the weather might be a factor. You know, unfortunately that a lot of the collegiate club sports are kind of the low man on the totem pole when it comes to pool reservations. So if, you know, something changes with the varsity swim schedule, they're the first people to get booted out of that pool time. So, there was often difficulties especially at the last minute in trying to work around some of those things. But, like I said, we're a small team with very many hats, so we all kind of pitched in to help fix those problems as much as we could.
Well, obviously, USA Water Polo looked at that experience as something worthwhile. Tell us about how that job offer came about and how you ended up in California.
Yeah, so I always, since visiting as an athlete in college, I've always wanted to live on the West Coast and wanted to be, not that I wasn't that far from the beach in the Philly area, but I always wanted to live near the beach. I like the fact that it doesn't snow here. never have to shovel snow again. So I definitely wanted to move out to California at some point in my life. And, obviously this is the epicenter for water polo. So I think I got really lucky in the timing of things, and the events position opened up at USA Water Polo. And I have to thank Felix Mercado for putting in a good word for me. Like I said, those small world of water polo, those connections can really, go a long way sometimes. And it just kind of fell into place. Like I said, I've been really lucky that, they saw the experience that I had and managing all of these different tournaments on any given weekend, and thought, oh, that's a very useful skill set for an event manager for us. So.
Yeah, obviously. So let's fill the viewers in on exactly what you do as an events manager.
Sure. So we run, depending on the year, obviously with COVID this year, things are very different, but typically about 20 or more events per year. And that includes anything from our 10 and under Dare to Dream Festival, which is the cutest event because you have all these little tiny kids running around, and they're so excited to be there, to Junior Olympics, which is an 800 plus team tournament, to national team exhibition games, where the focus for each of those is a little bit different, which keeps things really fun and exciting. But I basically do everything from contract negotiation to working with the local club or host that we partner up with to help run the tournament. And then I do all the entries management, roster checking, all that kind of stuff to make sure everybody's, in compliance and we're being safe and all that stuff. And then I actually set up and run the tournaments themselves. So it's a lot of work, but it's also a lot of fun. Like, I'm pretty lucky that I'm in a unique position where I get to see all of my hard work kind of play out by literally being there and getting to watch the games and watch the kids have fun and all that stuff. So, you have to be very organized, have a lot of attention to detail to make sure, again, that nothing slips through the cracks, because there's sometimes multiple events on the same weekend, and then you have the monster that is Junior Olympics, with, 40 different courses throughout an area that all need to be managed as well. So, it's a lot, but it's fun because I get to see the kids having fun at the end of the day.
Is that the hardest event for you to put together?
Junior Olympics, definitely. Yeah.
What's the hardest part of it?
We probably plan 2 weeks out. I'd say the month or so leading up to it, just trying to get all of the ducks in a row with the different pools and venues that we're using, as well as making sure all the teams know that they've qualified, and then making sure the schedule's good and that everybody knows where they're supposed to be going. There's a ton of little pieces that go on behind the scenes that just take a lot of time that most people probably don't know about, but it helps make the event run so much smoother.
Can you give us an example?
So my team of staff and interns probably spends about 2 weeks just sorting different materials. So they're sorting balls and supplies for each venue. And then they're also sorting all of the medals so that they can be distributed to all of the different sites. Because within each division, there are the different tiers. So you're looking at, 9 different sets of medals that need to go to probably 6 or 7 different locations. So just like getting all the logistics of all of that figured out, and then also doing all of the coach packets. So you figure, there's over 800 teams, and we have to print all these rosters and stuff them into individual team packets so that the coaches are prepared. So that definitely takes a lot of time for our team. And those are the things that people don't see, like leading up to it, is like we're physically doing these things and they take a lot of time. But luckily, at that point, it's an all staff hands on deck sort of a thing. So we get some extra help from the rest of the staff in the office to help with that stuff.
Well, I hope everybody that does attend JOs understands how much work you and your staff do behind the scenes. They probably don't. They probably don't even think about it, but maybe this will help open their eyes a bit to how much has to go on. And does anybody ever come up and thank you during JOs?
Oh, absolutely. Yes. Yeah, we definitely get as much thanks at JOs as we get the opposite. There's always going to be critics, and like you said, not everybody always understands everything that we've done to try and make it the best experience possible. But we definitely get coaches and parents that come up to us and thank us for all of the hard work, because I'm sure they can see it on our faces by day 8 or 9 of the 2 sessions. Mm-hmm. How tired we all are.
Yeah.
Those are the most exciting days because, they're championship days, which is the most fun.
Right. So events, obviously one of the biggest things affected by the pandemic. How has the pandemic affected your particular job?
I mean, I think it's been hard for USA Water Polo in general, and not just our specific department. Obviously, we've had to pivot and reschedule a lot of events and postpone things and even cancel some events in some instances, which is hard. Like, we're not able to have Junior Olympics this year. And that's, I feel like that was like a big blow to not just our staff, but to a lot of the athletes, because, that's the big event that they train all year for. And that's the big event that we plan all year for. So it's hard when you don't get to have that experience. And it's hard for us when we don't get to show off all our hard work, I guess, and, put this on for the kids. Because although it's the hardest event of the year, it's also, one of my favorites, because you get to see so many of these kids in one place, which is cool. Like, it's not just a couple of little 10 and under teams. The impact of how big it is really doesn't hit you until you get to see it in person.
Right. So how do you see your role evolving?
I think just more ownership over personally, more ownership over the different events, and just being able to create new and bigger and better things, and being able to add my own spin on different events, and to continue to add things to make these events better and a better experience for the coaches and for the athletes.
Well, that's a great goal. And we've talked a bit about your collegiate career, and we've talked a bit about your current career. How did collegiate water polo and your participation in it impact your career?
Well, I obviously wouldn't be here in this position if it wasn't for water polo, and that definitely started with the collegiate career, because I didn't end up swimming all 4 years, but I did play water polo all 4 years in college. And that allowed me to, take on some other interests too. But it also taught me a lot about time management and being organized. And those are 2 skills that I use every single day in my career, both, with the CWPA and at USA Water Polo, because if I didn't have those, experiences, and if I didn't have that, time management and organizational skills, I definitely would not have gotten this far.
Yeah.
Yeah. And for those that, listen or watch this and have gone to JOs, it would be a lot messier if I didn't have those skills.
Yeah, for sure. So think back to your time at the CWPA and currently with USA Water Polo. Have you ever been in a situation where you were in this situation and you stopped and said to yourself, I can draw on this now, whatever this is, from my college water polo and be able to deal with this situation? Has that ever happened?
Yeah, I would say so. I think being a college athlete and you kind of learn how to manage conflicts in the water in one way or another, and kind of take a step back and like, yeah, maybe you got, an elbow thrown your way, and you take a step back and you're like, okay, well, take a deep breath and, figure out how to not let that happen again, and maybe figure out how to pivot and move around a certain way. And I think that is very applicable to both my career at CWPA and now, because there's often times where things happen that are outside of your control, and you can't just react really quickly to them. You have to take a step back and kind of look at your options and figure out the best path forward.
Right. Well, pivot a little bit here. Often when interviewers are speaking with people like you and other people who are starting and advancing in their careers, they ask the question, what would you tell your younger self? And I'm not going to ask you that question. I'm actually going to take the reverse tack. Tell us what Katie Wieber, college water polo player, would tell Katie Wieber now.
Okay. That's a good question. I think younger me would tell me now. Yeah, I don't know what advice my younger self would give to my current self, because I feel like I was still pretty immature going through college. But one of the things that I kind of consistently tell myself is that things always happen for a reason. You're offered this job or this opportunity, and even though it may not be 100% what you want at that time, the experience that you get out of it is going to be worthwhile in the long run.
Well, that's good advice, and it's obviously more difficult for the younger person to tell the older person, something of benefit, but it's really good way to approach things and not forget your college water polo roots.
Right.
Finally, watching today, we have high school players and their parents that are looking at colleges. We have current college players, and I think they'd be interested in whatever pieces of advice you could offer them about what happens with your long-term career after collegiate water polo or because of collegiate water polo. Any piece of advice?
I think it can open up a lot of doors, but as a college player, being able to hone in on those skills, like I said before, with time management and being organized and staying organized. And obviously, one of the things I always tell kids looking to get into college is you have to be able to study, and you have to be able to manage that schedule. And I think that that's something that's really important for anyone, is don't just go for your water polo career, but go for your education too, because that is something that's going to stay with you forever. Water polo may be able to help open some doors, but you're not going to succeed if you don't focus on those other things as well.
Well, she followed up her career in water polo at Washington and Jefferson by staying in water polo, first with the CWPA and now with USA Water Polo. Katie Wieber has been my guest today on CWPA Remote. Katie, thanks so much for appearing today.
Thank you so much for having me. This was great.
Well, having your insights shared on the impact of collegiate water polo on your career, I'm sure has been useful to everybody. Until next time on CWPA Remote, this is George Gross Jr. wishing all our listeners the very best in and out of the water.